Good evening. Tonight we bring you a story that has shaken the city of Minneapolis and captured the attention of the entire nation. We examine a violent incident that has ignited fierce debate over immigration, law enforcement, and public safety. The city, already familiar with controversy, now finds itself at the center of a new and urgent conversation. On January 14, 2026, what began as a routine ICE operation targeting 3 Venezuelan nationals quickly spiraled out of control. The operation, intended to be straightforward, escalated into a life-threatening confrontation that no one could have predicted. The ICE officer, whose identity remains confidential for safety reasons, was attempting to arrest Julio Cesar Sosa Celis, Alfredo Alejandro Ahorna, and Gabriel Alejandro Hernandez Ledesma, men authorities allege were in the country illegally. The tension in the air was palpable as officers moved in, not knowing what would unfold. What began as a targeted arrest quickly turned violent, leaving one officer hospitalized with serious injuries. The incident has left the nation demanding answers, and the community reeling from the shock. The clash unfolded in a quiet residential neighborhood, shattering the peace and thrusting Minneapolis back into the national spotlight. Residents, who never expected such chaos on their doorsteps, are now grappling with fear and uncertainty. This city, already at the center of heated debates about policing and justice, now faces new scrutiny as federal and local officials clash over responsibility and the handling of the case. The lines between local and federal authority have never seemed more blurred. In the aftermath, officials have held press conferences, offering statements and fielding tough questions from the media. We'll break down the events, the official responses, and the broader questions this incident raises about policy, safety, and the future of law enforcement in America. The story is still developing, but its implications are already clear for communities across America. People are asking, how can we ensure safety while respecting rights? What changes, if any, need to be made? Let's walk through what happened, why it matters, and what it could mean for the future of Minneapolis and the nation as a whole. On a brisk morning in Minneapolis, ICE agents assembled with a clear and urgent mission. Their objective was precise, but the risks were unpredictable. They were tasked with arresting Julio Cesar Sosa Celis, a Venezuelan national with a significant criminal record, including prior violent offenses that had put him on law enforcement's radar. After days of surveillance, agents tracked Sosa Celis to a vehicle in a busy Minneapolis neighborhood. They moved in, initiating what they hoped would be a controlled, targeted traffic stop. But instead of complying, Sosa Celis hit the gas, launching into a reckless, high-speed chase through crowded city streets. The sudden escalation put both officers and bystanders at immediate risk. The pursuit came to a violent halt when Sosa Celis crashed into a parked car, drawing a crowd of startled local residents and causing chaos on the block. Refusing to surrender, Sosa Celis bolted from the wreckage and took off on foot, with an ICE officer close behind, determined not to let him escape. The chase weaved through backyards and between homes, transforming what should have been a routine arrest into a dangerous, unpredictable foot pursuit that spilled into the heart of a residential community. The officer finally caught up and attempted to detain Sosa Celis, but the suspect fought back with unexpected ferocity, making the arrest far more perilous than anticipated. Alone and separated from his team, the officer found himself in a vulnerable position, struggling to subdue a determined and aggressive suspect with no immediate backup in sight. The confrontation escalated rapidly, shifting from a standard arrest to a desperate fight for control, as onlookers began to gather and record the unfolding chaos. Suddenly, the situation took a darker turn, the officer's alarm evident as he realized the danger was far from over. 2 more men emerged from a nearby apartment, converging on the scene and setting the stage for a violent ambush that would change everything in an instant. What began as a focused operation had now spiraled into a full-blown public safety crisis, with the neighborhood on edge and law enforcement scrambling to respond. The officer was suddenly outnumbered, facing a rapidly intensifying threat as the situation teetered on the brink of disaster. In a matter of moments, what started as a routine enforcement action would explode into a national flashpoint, drawing the eyes of the country to a single chaotic city block. As the officer grappled with Sosa Celis, Alfredo Ahorna and Gabriel Hernandez Ledesma rushed from a nearby apartment. Armed with a snow shovel and broom handle, they attacked, turning the arrest into a brutal 3-on-1 assault. The officer, already struggling, was now being struck from all sides. Federal officials described this as a coordinated ambush, not a spontaneous scuffle. The blows allowed Sosa Celis to break free, only for him to rejoin the attack. The officer, outnumbered and battered, faced a life-or-death struggle. In these moments, training and survival instincts took over. The attack was relentless, pushing the officer to the brink. Deadly force was now a real possibility. The next seconds would decide the fate of everyone involved. Facing a brutal assault, the ICE officer drew his weapon and fired a single shot, striking Sosa Celis in the leg. The gunshot ended the attack instantly. The assailants retreated, barricading themselves in a nearby apartment. The wounded officer managed to call for backup, prompting a swift response from local and federal law enforcement. A tense standoff followed, with tactical teams surrounding the building. The officer was rushed to the hospital with serious injuries, while Sosa Celis also required medical attention. After a period of negotiation and preparation, law enforcement breached the apartment and arrested all 3 suspects. The violent confrontation was over, but the fallout was just beginning. The city was left reeling, and questions about what led to this moment dominated the headlines. The officer's decision to fire his weapon was a last resort, taken in the face of imminent danger. DHS labeled the shot as defensive, emphasizing the severity of the threat. The suspect's immediate retreat after the gunshot showed they weren't prepared for deadly force. Barricading themselves inside the apartment created a new crisis for law enforcement. Both the officer and Sosa Celis were hospitalized, highlighting the violence of the encounter. Tactical teams acted quickly, breaching the apartment and arresting the suspects without further injury. The incident underscored the risks officers face and the split-second decisions required in life-threatening situations. The successful resolution was a testament to coordinated law enforcement response. Now, all 3 men faced serious federal charges. The city and the nation demanded answers about how it had come to this. The federal response was immediate and forceful. Within hours of the incident, federal agencies mobilized resources and personnel, making it clear that this was not going to be treated as just another local crime. The presence of heavily armed officers and a visible show of authority sent a message that Washington was taking the attack extremely seriously. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem called the attack an attempted murder of a federal officer, signaling the intent to pursue the harshest charges. She emphasized that any assault on federal personnel would be met with the full weight of the law and promised a thorough investigation. Noem's words were not just a warning to the perpetrators, but also a reassurance to law enforcement nationwide that the federal government stood firmly behind them. Noem also criticized Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, blaming local policies for creating a hostile environment for law enforcement. She argued that lenient city regulations and a lack of cooperation with federal agencies had emboldened those willing to challenge police authority. Her statement turned the incident into a political flashpoint, accusing local leaders of encouraging resistance against police. The press conference quickly became a battleground for competing narratives, with national media outlets amplifying the controversy. The clash between federal and local authorities reignited debates over sanctuary city policies and law enforcement cooperation. City officials defended their approach, arguing that community trust was essential for public safety, while federal leaders insisted that stricter enforcement was necessary to prevent further violence. Critics accused Noem of politicizing the tragedy, while supporters saw her as defending law and order. The divide reflected deeper tensions in American society, with both sides rallying their bases and using the incident to push their agendas. The rhetoric ensured the Minneapolis ambush would be debated far beyond the city limits. News outlets across the country dissected every statement, and social media buzzed with heated arguments about responsibility and reform. The incident became a symbol in the ongoing national struggle over immigration and policing. For many, it highlighted the challenges of balancing security with civil rights and the difficulty of finding common ground in a polarized nation. The political fallout was just beginning, with lawmakers in Washington preparing for heated debates and new proposals that could reshape the future of law enforcement in America. DHS released details about the 3 suspects, painting a troubling picture. Sosa Celis, the primary target, was in the country illegally and had prior criminal convictions. He'd previously been in local custody, but authorities released him despite an ICE detainer. The other two men, Adjorna and Hernandez Ledesma, also entered the U.S. illegally and failed to comply with immigration proceedings. Their involvement in the attack escalated their legal troubles dramatically. The case became a focal point in the debate over border security and local cooperation with federal authorities. The suspects' histories fueled arguments on both sides of the immigration debate. The Minneapolis ambush sparked fierce debate from all sides. Some see it as proof of the dangers law enforcement faces and demand harsh penalties for the attackers. Others blame failed immigration policies, pointing to the suspects' illegal status and criminal records. Immigrant rights advocates question ICE's tactics and the wisdom of public arrests in residential neighborhoods. Local residents are left caught in the middle, worried about safety and the impact of violent confrontations on their community. The incident became a battleground for national arguments over policing, immigration, and public safety. Each perspective asks different questions, but all agree, something must change. The community's desire for peace and security remains at the heart of the debate. This Minneapolis story is more than a headline, it's a reflection of America's deepest divisions. It raises urgent questions about law enforcement safety, immigration policy, and political polarization. The violent ambush forces us to consider how we protect those who enforce our laws, and what happens when respect for authority breaks down. The suspects' histories highlight the challenges of border security and local federal cooperation. The political fallout shows how quickly crises become partisan battlegrounds. Ultimately, this incident is a wake-up call about the fragility of public safety and the urgent need for honest debate. The choices we make now will shape the kind of country we become. This story matters because it demands we confront hard truths and decide what we stand for.